Yes!
You know, I was thinking about something the other day. A lot of people were confused when Bungie stated that Pinnacle Weapons would no longer be a thing after Season 7. That doesn't mean that the current Pinnacle Weapons would be taken out of the game, because that would be stupid and unfair, but it does mean that there wouldn't be any new Pinnacle Weapons introduced in Season 8 and beyond, and a new concept known as Ritual Weapons will replace Pinnacle Weapons. Now in this video, we're going to discuss why Pinnacle Weapons were discontinued and if Ritual Weapons will be worthy successors. But without further ado, let's get it in. Before I immerse into explaining the differences between Pinnacle and Ritual Weapons, be advised that I have a video on what Pinnacle Weapons are, and in that video I talk about all 12 of Destiny 2's Pinnacle Weapons and how to obtain them. I also have a video on all of the 3 new Ritual Weapons, so if you haven't watched either one of those videos, I would highly suggest that you do so if you're a new light player or someone who just returned to Destiny 2 after a long break. Now, if you have watched these videos, you're going to hear me repeat myself a bit, so bear with me, okay? Pinnacle Weapons are fully masterwork legendary weapons with one unique perk. Since Season 5, there's always been one Pinnacle Weapon introduced for Crucible, Gambit, and Strike/PvE activities. Ritual Weapons are also fully masterwork legendary weapons, but they do not have a unique perk. But instead of having 2 trait perks like every other legendary weapon, Ritual Weapons have 2 trait perks in the first slot and 2 more in the second, which gives players a bit more freedom. Now, if you aren't very knowledgeable about the how-tos of Destiny 2's weapons and gear rarity and all the other nonsense, allow me to explain something to you. Exotic is the highest gear rarity in the Destiny franchise, and all exotic weapons and armor are unique in the sense that they have perks and cosmetics not shared with anything else in the game. Unfortunately, uniqueness doesn't always equate to power, so a lot of exotic weapons and armor are incredibly underwhelming despite being one of a kind. Despite that, you can only equip one exotic weapon at a time and one exotic armor piece at a time. Going against the fact that there are some exotic weapons and armor pieces that are terrible in performance, Bungie played it safe and restricted us to only being able to equip one at a time. It's easier that way than to spend a lot of time trying to figure out which exotics could be safely used together. Now that you understand a little bit more about how exotics work, let me explain something very odd about Pinnacle Weapons. Similarly to exotic weapons, Pinnacle Weapons have an exclusive perk that no other weapon in the game has. This means that Pinnacle Weapons are incredibly good at what they were designed for. Recluse is in the highest rate of fire archetype of submachine guns, and its Master Arm perk makes it an amazing option in both PvE and PvP. The same goes for the Mountaintop and its insane DPS potential against PvE bosses. This is why you commonly see these weapons paired together. Luna's Howl and Not Forgotten were the PvP Apex Predator weapons from the moment they made their debut in Season 4 all the way until they were adjusted in Season 7. Before long, Pinnacle Weapons became a pretty much mandatory choice over every other weapon in the game, which caused a lot of balancing issues in Destiny 2. These weapons were eventually referred to as and perceived as legendary exotic weapons due to how powerful they were, and it's almost safe to say that Pinnacle Weapons are and or were better than exotic weapons because, for one, they have unique perks like exotic weapons. For 2, they don't have the only one can be equipped at a time restriction like exotic weapons do, since they're legendary. And last but not least, they're fully masterwork, meaning that they can generate orbs on multi-kills, whereas exotic weapons have to have an exotic catalyst to do this. One of the main complaints from the community is that exotic weapons should always generate orbs of light with or without a catalyst. So that was another reason why Pinnacle Weapons were more practical than exotic weapons. Honestly, if you really think about it, Pinnacle Weapons are their own weapon rarity based on the amount of things they're capable of. It definitely isn't uncommon to see somebody running an all Pinnacle weapon loadout. So due to the fact that Pinnacle weapons are on par with or even better than exotics, because again, due to the lack of that one at a time restriction, it was too easy of a choice when it came down to deciding to use an exotic weapon or something else. Or you could use an exotic weapon in one slot and a Pinnacle weapon or 2 in the other 2 slots. Pinnacle weapons were basically exotic weapons in disguise, and after the Luna's Howl Not Forgotten adjustments, many members of the Destiny community predicted that Recluse was next to get nerfed due to how amazing it is, and no matter what game you use it in. And that's exactly what ended up being announced. Now, before taking that route, Bungie decided to cease introduction of Pinnacle Weapons after Season 7, and that's when Ritual Weapons were introduced into the game. Now, even though Ritual Weapons could never give you the legendary exotic vibe that Pinnacle Weapons do on account of not having any exclusive perks, they make up for it by having 4 different trait perks, which is something that's never been done in Destiny 2. And if you think about it, Ritual Weapons are pretty unique too. Due to the fact that Pinnacle Weapons being a thing was incredibly disruptive to the balance of the game, I'm not even upset with Bungie's decision to discontinue them. I hate seeing weapons get nerfed, but this would have been the inevitable fate of probably every Pinnacle weapon if Ritual Weapons were never introduced. TLDR, Pinnacle Weapons were Bungie's biggest mistake, because if you're using a Pinnacle weapon, you're basically using an exotic weapon without using up your exotic slot. Now, would I say that Ritual Weapons are worthy successors to Pinnacle Weapons? At this point in time, it's a bit too early for me to give y'all a fully fledged opinion about that, on account of ritual weapons being such a new concept, and alongside the fact that we only have 3 of them right now. Maybe when a few more seasons have rolled around, I'll be able to answer that later, but if we're exclusively referring to Season 8's ritual weapons alone, I'd in all due seriousness say no. Edgewise and exit strategy aren't weapons that I'll ever see myself using because we already have a lot better performing submachine guns and machine guns in the game. I could probably see myself using edgewise as an ad clear machine if it ever comes to a point in time where I need to mow down a bunch of ads with solar shields or something, but I don't know. I just don't see myself using this weapon, especially due to the fact that edgewise and fixed odds are the only solar damage machine guns in the game that can still be obtained. The Avalanche from last year's Dawning was also a solar damage machine gun, but it can no longer be obtained in game. I'm also not a huge fan of edgewise because I've never liked the 900 RPM machine guns, even in Destiny 1, but I did make an exception for 21% delirium, and only 21% delirium. Exit strategy doesn't wow me because I'm not super fine to its perks. I'm not saying that its perks aren't interesting because it doesn't have kill clip, outlaw, rampage, or any of the other cliche perks that the Destiny community obsesses over, because it does have swashbuckler, which is one of my favorite perks in the game. I suppose that I'm not too fond of exit strategy because I don't really use submachine guns like that, and nothing about this weapon is exciting to me. Now, Randy's throwing knife, on the other hand, is cut from a completely different cloth than the other 2 Season 8 ritual weapons. Now, Randy's throwing knife is the only kinetic 260 RPM scout rifle in the game, as well as the first 260 RPM scout in Destiny 2 outside of the Vice Foundry. All 260 RPM scouts have the rapid fire frame intrinsic perk, which gives them fully automatic fire. The rapid fire frame scouts have also been referred to as long range auto rifles for obvious reasons, and since Randy's throwing knife made his debut, it's been a worthy contender in PvP, which is amazing because scout rifles have been sucking so bad in PvP for the longest time. If the presence of this weapon remains as strong as it currently is, and a few months have passed, it'll be safe to say that Randy's throwing knife is meta, especially due to the fact that hand cannons and pulse rifles had their range stats adjusted so that they would experience more damage drop off if engaging at longer distances. This enables Randy's throwing knife and other scout rifles to compete at ranges only they're supposed to be viable at. Before, pulse rifles and hand cannons could contest scout rifles at much longer ranges, which made scout rifles an unlikely choice when it comes to PvP weapons. Alright everybody, that does it for this one. I hope that you found this video helpful. In the comment section, tell me how you feel about ritual weapons and if you think that Pinnacle Weapons should return in the future. Now, if you made it to the end of this video and found it to be informative, do me a favor and thumb rest of that like button until it turns blue. And if you're new to my neck of the woods, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you won't ever miss a video of the most elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy.